Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table. Welcome back. It is good to have you aboard. You're listening to Money on Tap. My name is Seth Krusman.
And I'm Ben Brayshaw.
Folks, today we have got a special guest with us, Greg Levinson of Levinson Law. And Greg is a 20-year veteran to law. He's been practicing in the Portland area for the last 20 years. And really his practice is unique in this. He focuses on small businesses, small and emerging businesses, and transitions and buy-sell agreements and contract law. That's really the focus that he started out with, but that transitioned into estate planning for small families and small businesses. And so they really went hand in hand. He has a wealth of knowledge, also a adjunct professor at Lewis and Clark Law College here in Portland, and it's going to be a lot of fun to have him on. And hold on to your seats, folks, because you are going to get so much information that's critical for you if you're in any of these categories. And it's a pleasure for us to be able to bring you a topic that is really near and dear to our practices and our hearts and the families that we serve, and is going to be a lot of fun because Greg is that. He is a lot of fun and a bundle of energy. So, folks, before we get too far down the road here, we're going to introduce you to Mr. Gregory Levinson.
I appreciate the invite and look forward to the conversation.
That's a lot, Seth, for him to look forward to talking to you today. I don't know.
At this time of day, I agree.
I think that's it. I think this is so early for me. I'm still a little bit confused of who I'm talking with and to. So
poor Greg, West Coast time on a morning show. That's tough. That's tough. But I appreciate
it. It really is. When you said 20-year veteran, this brings me back to my 6 years in the Navy when I had to get up this early, and it's been quite some time since I've had to do that. So
welcome back. Boot camp on Money on Tap.
That's right. If you start yelling at me and telling me I'm worthless, I'm going to just stop right now.
No, we're not going to do that. You're the star of the show today, Greg. So we can't do that.
I've come a long way.
So, Greg, I had a lot of fun just kind of getting to know you, your background, your experience, and if you could kind of take us through just a little bit in terms of what connects you to that business first and foremost, and what are the things that a business owner that's in that smaller emerging market would need to I guess kind of show up for them and to be able to say, I need to call Greg, or I need to be taking a look at small business planning.
Yeah, it's a great question. I have three kind of main focuses to my small and emerging business practice. The first one is business formation. So if someone is actually thinking, hey, I want to start my own business, right? Especially in this economy, there could be a downsizing. There could be, and they got a nice package from their corporation or business, and they thought, I've always wanted to start my own business. That's one of the packages I offer is business formation packages, and they would contact me and we can talk about, what that means. One of the first questions is what type of entity would you want to be? Do you want to be an LLC? Do you want to be a corporation? Are you going in with another person and you're thinking you may want to be a partnership? You may want to start a nonprofit. I've had people who had dreams of starting a nonprofit. So we would start the conversation with kind of that entity formation, business formation type question. And from there, we start talking about, okay, once this business is up and running, right, how are you going to, what kind of contracts might you need? Are you going to have contracts with vendors? Are you going to be hiring employees? Are you going to be hiring independent contractors? So we start talking about contract formation and contracts for the business that protect the business. And then the third part is branding, right? Intellectual property. So we start talking about trademarks, copyrights. I don't do patents. I'm not a patent attorney. Those are what we call the Uber nerds, because patent attorneys are, not only do they have to have some kind of an engineering or science bachelor's degree, then they go to law school. And so that's a whole separate field. But I do trademarks and copyrights. So we just kind of have this conversation about, formation, contracts that will protect the business, trademarks for branding protection, and it, kind of goes from there.
So as you're laying out that foundation, I see lots of opportunity for somebody that is, got the idea, or I'm thinking of how many people right now are maybe going through a job transition and are looking at, hey, what are my options? I actually just had a conversation with lovely individual yesterday in a similar place. She's trying to figure out what are the local governances to the business of importing some things that she would like to bring to a local consumer. And it's a simple idea, but it can have some really complex ramifications when it comes to really making sure that you're in compliance here locally. And I see so many opportunities for somebody in that position to maybe go out to the Zoom community, right? The legal Zoom community, or whoever is out there offering discount law.
We don't. That's like that's the name that shall not be named, right?
That's like going to. That's like saying I want to go to like Peter Luger's, versus McDonald's.
right, exactly.
Drive through McDonald's window and saying, "I'd like a T-bone."
Right. We don't use. It's like Harry Potter. It's the legal one that thou shalt not be named.
It's probably the risk equivalent of saying you want your burger medium rare at McDonald's instead of well done.
Right. So sorry. Go on.
Yeah. No. I was just thinking. There's so many places where people can misstep and have these things in hindsight that they're like, oh my gosh, I should have called Greg.
Yeah. I actually fixed quite a few of those when people go to the place that shall not be named, and then they come to me, and it's like I look at the operating, so an LLC, for instance, it's actually not all that complicated, but there are steps that need to be done. And so really, an LLC is comprised of only three pieces. It's filing the articles of organization with the Secretary of State. It's getting a tax ID number for that LLC. And it's drafting what's called an operating agreement, which for a single member LLC is kind of like bylaws of a corporation. If there's two or more members in an LLC, they're called members, not partners or owners. They're called members. If there's two or more members, it's akin to an operating agreement is akin to a partnership agreement. And so if they went somewhere else, if they just went online and just downloaded a template from somewhere, they can really. It necessarily won't happen right away, right? Nothing truly happens like within the first couple of months or even maybe the year. But, a year out, 2 years out, all of a sudden, there's an issue with, whether it's one of the other members, or, they want to get some financing through a bank, and the bank says this operating agreement really isn't worth the paper it's written on. And now all of a sudden, they're kind of in a lurch. And so they come to me, and I have to kind of fix that paperwork.
Greg the Fixer, Levinson, joining us here today on Money on Tap. It's fun to have you, because this is a really one of those topics that I think a lot of people step away from in some way, shape, or form because of the unknowns, and it can be a little bit intimidating. And I really appreciate you bringing it down to earth, making it accessible, and doing the work that you do. So what's up next, Ben?
So, my question for you, Greg, and I think this is something that a lot of business owners, whether they're in formation or already formed a corporation, probably ask this to themselves regularly, especially with the tax law constantly changing. But, when is it the right time to be, and I'm talking in general matters, so we're not giving anyone any very specific advice, but
because I'd have to bill you, Ben. So.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So LLC versus S corp versus C corp. That's probably the number one business owner question, which probably anyone who's tuning into the show is saying, "Hey, listen, should I be changing from my S corp to a C corp right now because corporate tax rates have dropped, down to 21%, and if Biden gets into office and he raises the corporate tax rate like he's talking about, is that something where I should switch out of my C corp potentially?" Those are the questions that I think people have. So, could you add some flavor to that?
No. Next question. Absolutely. So, kind of just giving that 10,000-foot overview. One of the nice things about an LLC is that it can actually choose how it wants to be taxed. So if you're a single member LLC, you have two options. You can either keep it as what's called a disregarded entity. So for a single member LLC, the IRS allows you to choose to be taxed as a disregarded entity, which means all you do is file your taxes on your own 1040, your own personal 1040, and you attach what's called a Schedule C. So there's really no, there's no tax advantages per se, but it's a very easy, tax preparation. However, if you, even if you're a single member LLC, the LLC can elect to be taxed either as a C corp or an S corp. So it maintains the LLC legal structure, but it can be taxed as a C corp or an S corp. And I'll get into why someone would want to do that or not. But let me just go into the two or more person or two or more member LLC. The default tax election for a two or more member LLC is partnership. And so it's a partnership tax return. So basically the LLC would file now I'm blanking on the tax return for a partnership, but it's the partnership
K1.
Tax return. What's that?
The K1 are you talking about?
No, so the members get a K1 from the LLC, and then they file that K1 on their own personal tax return.
Right.
But the LLC itself has to file its own partnership tax return.
Gotcha.
I want to say it's I apologize, I'm blanking on the number.
That's all right. You're giving us a great idea for our next guest and our first question.
Right. What is your next guest is the IRS auditor, and he'll be asking what that, and he'll be auditing Levinson law probably. But anyway, the two member so a two or more member, the default is a partnership, but it can also choose to elect to be treated as a C corp or an S corp. So now, why would either a single member or a multi-member LLC choose to be taxed as an S corp or a C corp? And really, again, using kind of just a 10,000-foot level, I'm not a CPA, and honestly, I'm not a tax attorney. I have resources for that.
Was it the 1065? I just Googled it.
Yes, 1065. Good, thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Google. Google gets credit.
That was going to irritate me. So, thanks for scratching that. So, why would a single member or a multi-member LLC choose to be taxed as an S corp? What the S corp allows you to do, there's two things that electing S corp allows the members to do. One, it now actually makes the LLC a corporation for IRS purposes, which means that member can now be an employee of that LLC. And so if you want to, because if your default as a disregarded entity or your default as a two or more member LLC is a partnership, you cannot be an actual employee. You can't get W-2 wages. You have to take draws. And, some people do that, but some people actually want to take out, Social Security benefits and all those type of things. And so by electing either C or S Corp, you now can become an employee of your LLC. The main reason, though, why someone would want to become an S Corp, elect S Corp, is there is a significant tax advantage. Basically, when you are a single member disregarded entity or a 2 or more member LLC, default partnership, and you want to, and you make, we'll just go with the single member, okay, because it's just easier for an analysis. Let's say that single member makes $200,000 a year net, right? So they're financial planners, and they're selling lots of insurance, and so they're making bank, right? And they're making $200,000. Well, you have to take out the self-employment tax on that, which is around 16%, right? I think it's like 15.8%, somewhere around there. So basically, you're paying $32,000 a year on self-employment taxes on that $200,000. By electing an S Corp, what that member can now do, because you can be an employee and take wages, you can pay yourself like $120,000 in wages, and you're going to pay that self-employment taxes on that. But the $80,000 you can take as a distribution, and you don't have to pay the 16% on that $80,000. And so there's some significant tax savings why someone would want to become an S Corp when you start making, the general rule, what I tell people is you should probably be making above $75,000 net for an S Corp to make sense. And the reason why I say that is the IRS doesn't allow you to just say, okay, I made $75,000. I'm going to just take $75,000 in distributions, right, and not pay any self-employment tax. The IRS requires you to have basically, it's the most generous I've seen is kind of a 60-40 split between wages and distributions. So if you make $80,000, 60% of that is what, $48,000, and then you can take $32,000 possibly as a distribution. Well, 16% of $32,000, is about $5,000 a year, $6,000 a year. But now that you've elected to be an S Corp, you get to file all the S Corp tax returns. So that's quarterly tax returns. That's the annual 1120S tax return, which means more than likely you're going to have to hire a CPA to do this. And a CPA is going to charge you, $5,000 to $6,000 a year to do these quarterly and annual tax returns. So you're really, either breaking even or potentially even losing money because you just didn't make enough. It starts to make more sense when you make that $100,000 or more, because you're still going to pay the CPA, but you're going to get higher, tax savings. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
And the reason it's a little bit more complicated why you can't, of course, the IRS doesn't allow you to have your cake and eat it too. The reason someone would want to elect to be a C Corp is because the C Corp allows the owners to basically have all the cafeteria type plans that the corporation can pay. So medical reimbursement, health insurance, things like that. If you're an S Corp, it doesn't allow if you're a 2% or more owner, it doesn't allow the owners to take advantage of those cafeteria plans. And so and when I have these conversations pretty much every single time, obviously, but I usually bring in a CPA. They don't really need a tax attorney. It's usually a CPA is sufficient. And we go through like, okay, here's the benefit of the S Corp. Are you making, this much money? And does it make sense to get this 16% savings on the self-employment tax? Or, are you a family, do you have a family and you want medical plans and health plans and all the different things? And would it be more advantageous to be a C Corp?
Folks, we're talking to Greg Levinson, 20-year veteran to the small business planning world of law. And you can reach him at 503-222-9057. Or you can also find him at that's lev-law.com. And Greg, thank you so much for just shedding some light on the kind of the fundamentals or the basics of that question, which got into some really good details. As a matter of fact, I appreciated the numbers you were pulling through there for the example. Ben, was there anything else on your question there that you were going to ask?
Well, I just was kind of, and the numbers are helpful, but the question I would have is if I were to summarize that a little bit, Greg, in my perspective. So if you're kind of crossing the $100,000 net range, that's when you really need to start figuring out whether an S corp or an LLC really makes sense. Correct? I mean, that's kind of what you're giving people.
Right. That's the nutshell, right? That's the takeaway. I say 80,000, 75, 80,000, but yeah, somewhere in that upper division, 100,000 is a good number. 80,000 could start to make sense depending on, what the situation is. But yeah, 100,000, if you're netting 100,000, you really need to start having that conversation of, is this the right tax election? Honestly, unless you are going to be a public company, right? A publicly traded company, even LLCs can be a publicly traded company, but unless you're going to be a publicly traded company, the whole traditional corporation entity as an entity is kind of an outdated entity. Very few people actually incorporate now as a traditional C Corp or as a traditional S Corp. And the reason is because, as I mentioned, the LLC only has three components, right? It can have more, but it's legally, for legal requirements, it has the articles of organization, it has the tax ID number, and it has what we call an operating agreement. A corporation has a lot more, right? It has the articles of incorporation, it has the tax ID number, it has bylaws, but then you have to have stock subscription agreements, organizational minutes, and then every year it's required by law that the shareholders and directors have an annual meeting. And you would be surprised, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, people, especially single member or two member, we're talking corporations, single shareholder or two shareholder corporations, they do not have those annual meetings. Like, this is silly. Why do we have to have a meeting with myself, right? Especially if they're a single shareholder corporation. I'm the president, I'm the director, I'm the grand poobah. Why do I have to have a meeting with myself every year? Well, because the courts say so. And if you don't, you're actually, putting the legal structure of the corporation in jeopardy. So the corporation the traditional corporation as an entity is really kind of an outdated model. Before 1991, at least in Oregon, I think Oregon established the LLC around 1991. Corporations and partnerships were the only two viable entity choices for someone to start. Since the LLCs have come in existence, and as I mentioned, since LLCs can elect to be treated as a C Corp or an S Corp, there's really no reason for someone to be a traditional corporation. Again, unless they the only reason is if they want to go public and they just kind of have this fear of LLCs being a publicly traded company, or what some people will tell me is, well, I want to issue stock to my employees and they don't understand, my employees won't understand, fractional interest of membership interest in an LLC. They only understand stock. And so, I'll be a corporation. I try and educate them on that you can actually there's other ways through an LLC that you can issue ownership, but some people are just more traditional. But yeah, as an entity choice, the LLC is really the most viable option, and then we just decide whether you're going to be the default, the IRS default, or choose C or S Corp.
So just for some of our listeners, because Greg, it's funny. There's so many people who start off doing a small business, and they've never really have the idea. It could be somebody. I know somebody who makes soap, and they started making soap, and now they have an enormous business. And the progression of that stuff, people don't realize. Hey, they start out small, and they're selling at a farmer's market or something like that, and then all of a sudden it becomes a real company. and they're kind of overwhelmed by this piece. And so the concept of gross or net, is not necessarily a common phrase for anybody outside, a professional designation almost most of the time. But, net would be the amount of money you get to keep, and gross being the total amount of revenue coming in before all of your expenses. So I think it's really good to make that clarification that, if you're making that $75,000 to $100,000 net after all of your expenses, and that's what you're taking in, it's a great time to really start engaging proper legal efforts to figure out how to maximize the amount of money you get to keep moving forward. And that's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a significant distinction, right? My gross is very different from my net, right? After my net is about $4 a month, but but no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, gross is, sometimes the joke, gross is gross, right? Like, ooh, that's gross, because that's rent, rent that comes out, payroll, right? Significant issue, advertising, all the expenses that the company pays, the debts of the company come out, and then whatever's left is the net. Right. And so, especially in service industries, people who are in service industries or manufacturing, right? Manufacturing, as you said, soap manufacturing, gross can be, $10 million a year. Net could be, 200,000, right? Because, you're paying for that manufacturing facility. You're paying for all the employees that are on the line and producing it. You're paying for intellectual property and, if there's trademarks and patents and copyrights, all those things go into that, into the gross expenditures, which then whittle down that net.
That's great, Greg. Hey, Seth, before we take a break, which I know is coming right here in a second, Greg, I'd like to get into the idea of protecting yourself and your company moving forward. And I know that, looking at LLCs, S Corps, and C Corps, there's conversation around which one's going to protect me and my family and my assets. And I'd really like to move into that after the break. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Folks, you're listening to Money on Tap, and joining us today, Greg Levinson, 20-year veteran to business law and small and emerging business, and also estate planning as well. We may or may not have time for that, but we are going to take a quick break. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Ben Brayshaw, one of the co-hosts of Money on Tap. If you have questions when it comes to your retirement and are looking for a personalized solution, contact us at Brayshaw Financial Group. In today's volatile stock market, we can help you plan to find your successful retirement solution. Am I saving enough? Am I saving into the right places? Do my investments match my appetite for risk? Do I have a tax strategy that is going to help me keep more of what I earn? How can I maximize my Social Security income? If you are like most people, you are getting closer and closer to your retirement and may be wondering if you're taking the right steps. If you're in retirement, you may be wondering, am I maximizing my income while preserving my estate and caring for my family? We talk about all things financial in what we call three-dimensional investing, putting a plan around your financial future. If you feel that now is the time to start getting the answers to some of these questions for your own situation, give us a call at Brayshaw Financial Group at 855-226-8551. Headquartered in Bedford, New Hampshire, we have offices throughout New England and across the country. We would love the opportunity to show you how we can help. There's absolutely no cost or obligation just to meet with us, and we welcome you to our office. Call us at 855-226-8551.
Now back to Money on Tap with Ben and Seth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We appreciate you being here with us today and joining us today. Greg Levinson of Levinson Law. You can reach Greg also at 503-222-9057. Greg, you also bring some experience in the education arena. You're a professor, I understand.
I'm an adjunct professor. Yes, I teach a course called contract drafting. So when you go to law school, your first year, traditionally it's a 3-year program. Your first year of law school, you take an entire year of contracts, which is just all theory, right? It's the theory of contracts, the formation of contracts, how, whether you can, defend against if there's breach, things like that. But they don't actually teach you. When I went to law school, there was no course where they actually teach you how to draft a contract. And so this course was set up prior to me by a professor before me back in like 2010. And then I took over around 2013. And I teach second and third year law students actually how to draft contracts.
It's funny to hear you say back in 2010 and 2013.
That sounds very interesting, Greg. Greg, I'm just appealed to hear more and take that class.
Well, Ben, I'm told that I'm kind of a tough professor, so I don't know if we would be able to maintain any kind of cordial relationship afterwards.
Oh, but, it sounds like you write a good contract. Then that's what we want. So
well, I hope so. I hope it's not where it's the dentist that has bad teeth, right? Yeah. I hope I can draft some good contracts.
Absolutely. So I was asking you briefly about, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it was just something that kind of ran through, which was. A lot of people have questions about protecting their companies and, even, multi-layer LLCs and all sorts of stuff that business owners hear about. Maybe this is a deeper concept than we're talking about, but would you just mind covering it briefly if that's possible?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm not we'd have to kind of discuss or kind of flesh out a little bit by what you mean by multi-level LLCs. But, the argument or the discussion of, should I be an LLC or should I be a corporation? Again, that I think has been mostly resolved in that LLCs offer the same level of legal protection as a corporation. And in fact, I would say even more so because of as I mentioned before, if you're a corporation and you're not abiding by the corporate formalities, that annual meeting minutes, having all those, having all the different documents, it's not that, that's an automatic, I'm going to be personally liable. That there's a theory called piercing the corporate veil, where if a corporation gets sued and the corporation doesn't have the assets to fulfill a judgment, the plaintiff can file what's called the piercing the corporate veil, which means it pierces that veil, that legal shield, and tries to get to the owners, those shareholders, personally. If you're a corporation, if you don't have the form, the corporate paperwork, or you're not doing those annual meeting minutes, that's not an absolute, we're going to be personally liable. But it's a chink in the armor, right? And lawyers, there's a reason why they call lawyers sharks, right? We like to circle. And if they can find a chink in the armor, they will continue to circle and see if they can keep pressing into that. Well, an LLC does not have that legal requirement. First of all, it only has 3 pieces of documents versus, the multi-level of documents that a corporation needs. And it doesn't have the legal requirement of having that annual meeting minutes. So I would argue that an LLC is actually more, there's more shield there in structure there than a corporation, because you don't have all the formalities that you have to follow. And the statute, if you look at the statute, ORS 63, which is the statute for LLCs, and ORS 60, which is the statute, Oregon Revised Statute for corporations, it has very similar language as far as protection, for the members of an LLC and for the owner shareholders of a corporation.
That's great. Yeah, I had talked to somebody one time, and they had set up a multi-level LLC, so like a parent LLC over an LLC, in fear of the piercing of an LLC, that they would create more.
And that's the thing real quickly. So if you, especially if you're a single member, right? If you're a single member parent LLC, and then that parent LLC is the owner of a subsidiary LLC, well, if they pierce the subsidiary, that means that it goes to the parent. and the parent is, then that single member. And if it's the same member, they're going to be able to pierce the parent.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how people think that, but it's like, if you're doing if the parent is the sole owner of the only reason multi-levels work where large corporations have subsidiaries that have protection is that, let's say you have a large corporation, right? 20 board members. And they're like, okay, we want to spin off a subsidiary. Well, what they'll do is they'll take one board member and they'll make that board member a director on the subsidiary. But the subsidiary will have another 9 directors that have no affiliation with the parent one. And so that and the ownership, they make sure the ownership isn't, it doesn't have the same ownership levels. And so that's how it works. But if you're a single member or a 2-member LLC, and that's the parent, and then they do a subsidiary LLC and it's solely owned by the parent and it's still the 2 members, there's really no legal protection there.
That's perfect. Thank you. That's great. I'm sure there's people that are listening to this saying, I have a question about that. So, Greg.
I'm sure they do.
Hey, if you have a question about anything that we're talking about today here with Greg, you can reach us at 855-226-8551. That's our number here at Money on Tap, and we'd be happy to get you in touch with Greg, or you can get a hold of him directly at 503-222-9057 or lev-law.com. Greg assured me that if you Google him, you can find him that way too.
Yeah, I started my own firm. I branched out in 2008, and luckily, one of my clients that I had was a website developer, and kind of a SEO. They were SEO experts, and so they, it was nice. They kind of helped me, give me some tips and things to get my website noticed, and so I was able to generate some good Google love, I guess. And so if you Google like Portland small business attorney or something like that, I tend to come up in the natural rankings, generally on the first page.
So the next topic that we really wanted to try to grab some time with you here, Greg, is the estate planning piece. And I don't know if this is just a natural fit, like anybody that's working in your vertical of small business succession and planning and all that just kind of naturally traffics towards estate planning. But you really do focus in I think kind of the ABCs, if I'm not mistaken, of somebody that's looking to get into or needs an estate plan and a small family plan. If you could walk us through your thought process of who that person is and why they need to get in touch with you.
Sure. It actually, the impetus of how I got into estate planning was a small business client. Small business client called me up and said, "Hey, I'm business is going great. Thank you so much. You really helped me out. Do you have a referral to an estate planning attorney?" And I said, "Well, I actually do estate planning." And they're like, "Oh, okay. Well, we'll use you then." And so, I started doing estate planning for small business owners, and then that just transitioned into families as well. So people just who were not necessarily who are business owners, but just families who need it. And that's really the core, when you talk about estate planning, the ABCs, right? Just the basic structures. There's really two types of estate plans that we're going to be looking at. Having a will, a basic will, which will govern your estate, or potentially having what's called a revocable living trust. Now, you can get into much, much more complicated estate plans. But the ABCs of it is, for most small business owners, again, as long as they're not, multi-millionaires, right, who need advanced estate planning, or families, with kids, if they're families with kids, generally the will and or the trust is a good estate planning vehicle. And the reason someone would want a will is there's two basic reasons. One, they have real estate, so they have a home or they have an investment property, and homes, real estate do not have what we call direct beneficiaries. People in your consumers, your clients would know what a direct beneficiary is, right? You have an insurance product, or you have a mutual fund, or some kind of investment, financial investment. And almost always that financial investment asks them, if you were to die, who do you want to get this money, right? It's a direct beneficiary form. My spouse, my kids, my dog, whatever it is. Real estate, by its very nature, does not have a direct beneficiary. So if you were to die and you have a house or you have, real estate investment, there's no way the court or, anyone could say, oh, well, it just goes to this person because, so you have to have a will. You have to have some document that says, upon my passing, I want this property to go to this person. Now, if you're married, traditionally, your spouse is on title with you. So if one of you dies, nothing really needs to happen, right? You don't necessarily need a will if one of you dies. But if both of you passes, and I apologize, right? Not the funnest, topic of conversation. When you die, if both of you pass, again, now you're in that, whoever you want that property to go to, whether it's one person or multiple people, no one really knows. And that's really where you get into these difficult, what we call probate situations, because the will would go to probate. And probate is basically, very simply, is just a court-ordered, or I would say a court-administered process to distribute the assets of your estate. And traditionally, it's mostly your house, right? And so if you have a will, or if you die without a will, which is called intestate, if you die intestate without a will, the court has to figure out, what to do with this house or what to do with your assets. And with a will, at least it gives the court direction. It says, okay, we want this house to, it's going to be, what happens is you have in your will, you're going to designate what's called a personal representative. On the East Coast, Ben, I think it's called an executor. But on the West Coast here, it's called a personal representative. Not sure why the difference, but we're not as snooty as East Coast people. East Coast people are executors. We're just personal. We're a personal rep.
Is it just just labeled that way in the autonomous zone over there? Is that how it works?
It is. Yeah. down on 3rd and Jefferson, it's personal representative. But so what happens is, if you have a will, and I apologize if I'm kind of doing some rabbit trails here, you're going to name a personal representative that's going to be in charge of your estate. And again, if you're married, nothing really needs to happen because your spouse, pretty much everything is going to be titled in your spouse's name as well. So nothing really happens. But if both of you were to pass, or if you're a single person and you die, the personal representative is going to, submit the will to the court for probate. They're going to then have the authority. The court's going to give them what's called a letter of administration that says, okay, this person has the authority to administer this estate. And so then they're going to take that letter. They're going to go to a real estate agent and say, hey, we need to sell this house, right? Real estate, great, just like anyone else. And they sell the house, right? $400,000. There was $100,000 mortgage on it. Mortgage company gets paid. There's $300,000 left over. The will says, we want to give it to, our nieces and nephews evenly. There's 3. So basically the personal representative, deposits that $300,000 into what's called an estate account, we'll get a check just like anyone else, or they can, wire the funds, and each of the nieces and nephews will get $100,000. And so that's really if you have real estate, you need a will, because if you don't have a will with real estate, whether it's your home or investment property, whoever your beneficiary is, it's going to be a difficult process for them through probate.
Greg Levinson, folks, is who's joining us today. You know what? This is incredible. We're going to run out of time here in a minute, but before we do, we want to bring it back to the trust piece in this, in what it is that you do and how you would recommend this or use this in estate planning. You can reach us at 855-226-8551. You're listening to Money on Tap. Don't go anywhere. Greg Levinson joining us today, folks, and doing a brilliant job of taking us through some of the ABCs in small family estate planning. We'll be right back. Hi, my name is Seth Crustman, partner with Brayshaw Financial Group and one of the co-hosts of Money on Tap.
One of the biggest concerns and largest expenses people face today is taxes. Without thoughtful planning, taxes can destroy future retirement dollars, eliminating the possibility of a timely retirement or dreams of what you want retirement to look like. If you're like most people, you're getting closer and closer to retirement, and you may be wondering if you're taking the right steps. Will my income be enough? Will rising taxes force me to give up my dreams? How does inflation factor into all of this? These are real concerns, and you're not alone. Putting a plan around your financial future is what we do. If you have questions when it comes to your financial security, and if you're looking for a personalized solution, contact us at Brayshaw Financial Group, 855-226-8551. It's time for you to start getting answers to your questions. Headquartered in Bedford, New Hampshire, Brayshaw Financial has offices across the country. We'd love the opportunity to show you how we can help. There's absolutely no cost or obligation to meet with us. Call us at 855-226-8551. 855-226-8551.
Now back to Money on Tap with Ben and Seth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Greg Levinson of Levinson Law at 503-222-9057 or lev-law.com is where you can reach him at directly. And we've been talking about small business. Been talking about the entities around small business and getting those pieces set correctly, depending on the purpose and direction of what it is that you would like to do or need to do to protect yourself there. And we've transitioned into small family estate plans, and the first piece of that being a will. And why would somebody need a will, and the importance of that. And Greg, you're doing a fantastic, a great job. Really appreciate you just laying out for us all of these pieces in succession. Would you please take us down this next rabbit trail, if you please, of trusts, and how does that what is that, and how does that help a small family?
Sure. I do need to backtrack because I mentioned in the previous segment that there's two reasons why someone wouldn't want a will. One, if they have real estate or a home. The second one is if they have kids. And this is actually pretty important because if you have kids, what a will does, it allows you, and this is really, and Seth, you will appreciate this. Ben, I apologize. I don't know if you have kids. Do you have kids?
No.
Okay, so then
I have four.
So then you can just blank out on this part. But if you have kids, the will allows you to designate a guardian, right? And also it also allows you to set up what's called a testamentary trust for your kids. So if you and your spouse were both to pass, the will allows you to designate a guardian, someone to take care of your kids. Again, if you don't have a will and you just tell someone verbally, like it could be your sister, it could be a sister or a parent, like, hey, when we die, we want you to take care of the kids. Okay, well, something tragic happens, both parents die. A sister of one of the spouses says, hey, yeah, they said that I was going to do it. Well, all of a sudden, a brother from the other spouse says, no, I thought I was going to do it. Now, all of a sudden, not only are the kids devastated by the parent's death, but now there's this, legal guardian battle because nowhere, they didn't have a will and nowhere was it designated who the guardian would be. And so a will is really important when you have kids because it designates who the guardian is. And again, talking about trust, you can set up what's called a testamentary trust, which means a trust for your kids would be set up upon your passing, upon the death of both parents. A trust would be set up. So let's again use that analogy of the house. If the house is $300,000 or there's $400,000, what the personal representative will do is they'll take that money and then will transfer it into a trust, and then you'll also designate what's called a trustee, someone who will be the financial representative for that trust for the benefit of the kids, right? So it doesn't, and there's a significant reason for this, because if you give $400,000 to your sister, right? Like we want our sister to, have this money for the benefit of the kids. Well, one, there's probably going to be some significant tax implications because all of a sudden the sister just got $400,000. And two, if the sister is married, right, and it's not set up into a trust, it doesn't go into a separate trust, that money could be considered a marital asset. And if the sister ends up getting divorced, right, ex-spouse may be able to lay a claim to that $400,000 and say, hey, that was a marital asset, even though it was for the benefit of the kids. Well, when you set up a testamentary trust, if upon both of your passing, the personal representative, like I said, will take it, the trustee, it'll be in a separate trust for the kids, and they will get, and the guardians will get basically a monthly check on the interest of that trust. And then whenever the kids reach a certain age, usually it's 25 or 30, then the trust is disbanded and the kids get the corpus of that trust. But that's another reason why you would want a will if you have kids, so that you can set up guardianship and you can set up a trust for your kids. Now, real quick, why set up a revocable living trust? Well, a revocable living trust is different than a testamentary trust. Like I said, testamentary trust is one you set up within your will, but it doesn't get set. It doesn't actually come active until both people die or the person dies. The trustor. A revocable living trust is one that you set up now. It's what's called inter vivos, during your life, right? And basically what you do is you put your house, if you have your home, you put your home into that trust now. And what that does, because as I mentioned before, if you have a will, or even if you don't, if you have a house, it has to go through probate because there has to be some way to administer that house to whoever you want it to go to. A revocable living trust allows you to transfer that house into a trust now. And upon your passing, it does not have to go to probate, because the trust owns it. There already is an existing vehicle for that house. And you can do the same thing. You could say, hey, we want our kids to get it, or we want this. But your trustee no longer has to go through probate to administer that house. It's in the trust, and you can avoid probate. So it's a great a revocable living trust is a great probate avoidance estate planning vehicle.
Wow. Well done. Folks, you've been listening to Money on Tap, and joining us today, Greg Levinson of I always take a look at your address here. You can reach him at lev-law.com. It's Levinson Law is the name of his company. And you can also reach him at 503-222-9057. And right there, you had it. You got it. In a nutshell, everything that you really need to understand right out of the gate around small business entities and contract. And Greg, I don't know what else to say other than thank you so much for being here with us today and doing such an amazing job with everybody here that's listening to you today.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to come on to the show and provide some input.
Thanks, Greg. That was awesome. That really was awesome.
Folks, if you have a loved one, if you have a family, if you have children, and you've been listening today to Greg, please take note. It's really critical. It's really important to get those pieces in place to protect yourself, your children, your business. You should at least take a look at Greg, get a hold of him. He'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. And Greg, can you tell us about what somebody would find out if they gave you a call, what the experience would be as far as a first-time meet with you?
Actually, I kind of have a unique structure. So I do charge for the initial consultation, and so I charge my hourly fee. But what I do is, if they decide to hire me, whether it's for business or for estate planning, is I credit up to 1 hour of that time towards the future fee. So they're not double dipping. They'll pay me for my time because I really do feel I provide some good value during that consultation time. And if they just, if they walk away and they, go hire someone else, or they go to the place that shall not be named, that's fine. They paid me for my time. But if they come back to me, which I hope they do, then I credit up to 1 hour of that consultation time towards the future fee.
Thank you. You've been listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. You can also find us at Facebook. We're at /3D Investing. We're also on Twitter at BFG_LLC. And as always, you can also find us at yourmoneyontap.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for liking our podcast. We appreciate you, and we can't wait to make it a great day and a great life with you here at Money on Tap.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.